Hello, Internet. My name is the Golden Stalfos, and today I want to talk about Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Um, I gotta say, it's better than the first game, but it's still not good. Um, Personally, I didn't care for Ori and the Blind Forest. I didn't play it when it first came out. I played it like a year or two ago, um, and I just thought it was pretty mediocre. Like, as far as Metroid style games go, this is bog standard. Um, but it's also a bog standard indie game, small child, big scary world, everyone gets a happily ever after. It's, ugh. And quite frankly, like, I hate when indie games do that. I honestly do. There's no point. The small child, scary world thing is just overdone and boring. And people keep doing it because they expect it to tug at the heartstrings, but like, if I've seen it 8,000 times, it's not going to get to my emotions. Sorry, I'm not that easy. you know. And gameplay wise, it was very basic. I mean, every single ability was exactly the kind of thing you would expect to have seen, and none of them were particularly like super well done or super interesting. They were just kind of there, and I just thought, eh, like whatever. It exists. I was very bored with it, and I beat it very quickly, and I didn't really care about it. Um, so when the sequel came out, and I thought, wait, they were still working on a sequel? Didn't this game come out 8 years ago? Um, which, yeah, let that be a warning to any future indie studio. If you if you don't charge properly for your game, then you won't have the funds, and it'll take you another 8 years to make the second one. You know, um, although that dev time actually really helped this game not be as bad as the original, because during that time, two of the best indie games ever made, Hollow Knight and Shovel Knight, came out. Different teams, unrelated projects. I know the names are similar. Sorry. And Ori just like straight up steals ideas from them. And you could argue that they make improvements, but I would argue that they didn't play test it enough or balance test it enough. And the quote unquote improvements actually just make it feel more boring and stale. So, what do I mean by that? All right. So, in Shovel Knight, there are three different play modes you can unlock uh, if you buy the full version. So, first you get to play as the titular Shovel Knight. Then you get to play as the bad guy, um, Plague Knight, who has explodies. And Plague Knight is the worst game mode. Like, all of the levels are basically identical to what they were in Shovel Knight's area, and the idea was, you know, have these different boss enemies just as playable characters in the same levels, so you can play the levels again, but with a little bit more movement variety. And like, you know, Plague Knight can move a lot more than Shovel Knight can, especially in the air. So it seems like it would work, but there are just too many obstacles that are specifically made for Shovel Knight's powers and just don't work very well with Plague Knight's powers. Um, they just didn't change up the design enough to complement that character. So they learned from that mistake when they made the third play mode for Spectre Knight. And so they gave Spectre Knight new abilities and then built the levels around his new abilities. And his main ability is that you can dash up through enemies and lanterns and things like that to like get extra height or travel and stuff. And so Ori steals that. And then from Hollow Knight has this really cool system of charms where you can basically, they're just like equipable items that give you static improvements. You know, like this one increases your damage, but it breaks if you ever die. You know, this one gives you temp HP. This one, um, you know, like there's tons of them, and they're super interesting. But my biggest complaint with the charm system in Hollow Knight is that several of those abilities should have been static upgrades. You know, like you shouldn't need a special charm slot just so that you can see yourself on the map. You should always be able to see yourself on the map. That's what maps are for. That's stupid. You know, getting the power to magnetically draw things to you. I mean, like, yeah, that's a power, and like putting it on the charm list means you have to trade out for it. But like, why? Like that just means you have to do more fiddling every time you go into a boss, because like you always want that charm on when you're exploring, and you never want it on when you're in a boss fight. And it's not an active ability. You could have just made it a passive upgrade. There are charms that are passive upgrades, so why? Um, you know, to my mind, the charm should be things that like severely augment the playstyle, right? Like there's one that there's some that create like little swarmy things behind you at the cost of your soul, and so those, you know, those deal damage and help you fight or whatever. But that's a different playstyle, right? There's one that like makes you stink so that you deal damage to enemies that are touching you. There's, you know, some that like augment the amount of soul you collect when you know, hit things, and like those kinds of things are great and really, you know, provide meaningful choice in gameplay. What is your style? What are you going to emphasize? Are you going to go all in on damage, utility, you know, restoring your health? What is your goal, right? And that's a great way to design charms, to have this like system where you can only pick so many, and you have to focus on the thing that you want to focus on. But some of those charms go against that idea. Some of them really, you just can't not have them, you know, like they should just be passive upgrades. And that was my biggest complaint with that system. So in Ori and the Blind Forest, in Ori and the Will of the Wisps, what they did is they took that charm system, they copied it wholesale, and they added the ability to upgrade certain charms, and they made it so you can hot swap charms instead of, you know, uh, only doing it at resting points. And that's it. They didn't really address that design concern at all. Um, there's a lot of charms that have like basically the same function as they did in Hollow Knight, but now you can upgrade them so that at first they're useless, and then after you pay a shit ton of money, they become the version they should have always been. Uh, you know, and it's just like not that interesting. You know, it doesn't really expand on that system at all. It just copies it, which is dumb. Now, the game does have some things unique to itself, mechanically speaking. Um, so you can have equipable weapons. Uh, well, effectively, they're weapons. Um, so you hold RT and you open up your weapon wheel, and then you equip them to X, Y, or B, right? And that's cool. No, it's left trigger, not right trigger. I don't know why I said that. But anyway, you know, and that's fine. Like as far as it goes, that's fine. Like that's a cool idea that's been done a lot before. It's not, you know, crazy. But there's a problem. They made it so that these things aren't really swappable. Um, you know, there are bits of the level design that require you to have certain things, and your default, and like some of them you will just never want to take out, right? Like you need to have the light attack equipped at all times. You never want to be without a melee attack option. That's ridiculous. Um, for some reason they made it an equipable thing. I mean, it's weird. And, for a little while, you only have 3, so you equip 3, and it's fine. But once you have all, 12 of them, and you have to switch between, oh, you need to have range attack for this thing. You need to have the light burst so you can do this jump. You need to have the feathers so you can trigger this thing. You need to have and it's just tedious, to switch them back and forth. It's very tedious, and you have to do it constantly. And it didn't need to be that way. There could have been combinations, right? Like, you get a bow and arrow as one of the first abilities, and it just is a ranged weapon. It mostly locks onto things because it doesn't give you an aiming reticule or a line to indicate where the shot is going or anything like that. I don't know why, but you get that. And then there's a second attack that is just the same thing, but it's a spear instead of an arrow. I guess it does more damage, but it's the same thing. Like it's not different. Um, and then you get a version that is a boomerang, basically. You throw it out and it comes back. And I'm just thinking, couldn't those just have been upgrades on the bow and arrow thing? And then you get the light burst, which, explodes on contact and can be turned into one of the things that you can dash through. So you need it for movement. Um, so why couldn't that have been folded into the bow and arrow? So I can just have the bow and arrow equipped the whole time and not have to do any bullshit, And they have 2 melee options, right? So you've got the light attack and the heavy attack right from the beginning. And the heavy attack can break certain things that the light attack can't. And that's about it. It's just a heavy attack. It's a hammer instead of a rapier, right? And that's the whole thing. But that takes up 2 slots. Those 2 things take up 2 slots. And so, if you want to have your light and heavy attack on you at all times because, you're constantly running into enemies and shit, and some of them are more suited to the heavy attack, well, now you have to toggle things, right? And you've got 4 different things that could have all been, looped into the bow and arrow, but you've also got some other random shit, right? You've got this feather that lets you spew wind at things. And as far as I can tell, it's only useful to stoke fires, and those only show up in 3 places so far. I mean, admittedly, I haven't 100% in the game yet, but it doesn't seem to be a big thing. I mean, getting the feather also gives you the ability to glide, but you just do that by holding the right trigger when you're in the air, so you don't have to equip it for that. So why do you have to equip it at all? Why couldn't you just always have the feather tied to the right trigger? You're not using it for anything else. And this kind of redundant over design shit is everywhere, right? You can dash through things with one button, but your regular dash attack is different from that button. And so you use right button and left button to dash and grapple. And so you can dash through things, you can grapple to different things that you don't unlock the ability to grapple to at first. You can dash through different things that you at first didn't have the ability to dash through, and I just Why? Why is it like this? Why did you need to have these two buttons do 6 things each? Just have one option. Okay, we don't need both dash and grapple. That's redundant. And they're done with the same button. Like, you dash through and you grapple on the same button. Why? Why? They're redundant. So, mechanically speaking, it doesn't really do much interesting with those abilities. Like, I mean, the grapple ability lets you latch onto anything that's glowing blue, which is like almost everything. Uh, except for the certain things that instead of grappling directly to them, you have to grapple and dash through, like all in one. Like, so you grapple to it, and then the momentum carries you past it for some reason. I don't know why those things are different from everything else that you grapple to. It's just over designed. There's too much bullshit going on. um, which honestly was part of my problem with the original. Like, it doesn't have any, like Ori and the Blind Forest doesn't have any new or unique ideas that weren't in every other fucking Metroid game, but it does, like, go a long way out of its way to make everything look overcomplicated with the fucking design style and just, like, take for fucking ever with the cutscenes and just, like, it's so unnecessary at every level. And as far as I can tell, the Will of the Wisps is the same thing. Like, before you were running around trying to free the world from the evil influence of this owl who was mad because the babies had gone missing or whatever. And now you're trying to run around and free the world from the evil influence of an owl who is mad because they are a fucked up monster and the other owls don't like them, I think. It wasn't exactly super clear. There's no dialogue in the cutscenes, even though they last forever. Um, but, like, did the enemy really have to be an owl again? Why? Why? What is the point of that? We even meet up with one of the baby owls from the last game who we were friends with, and then they die to the big mean owl to make you sad. Isn't that so sad? Don't you want revenge now? And I'm just like, could could you be any more, like, pointless, please? Like just narrative stakes. Don't This is not how you establish that. So basically, like, every area of the game has a chase sequence where you have to escape from this big bird thing in the background, or some other big monster thing in the background, and it's fine, I guess. I don't know. Chase sequences are kind of dumb, especially in this. Um, the movement is pretty fluid. It's pretty easy to move around, and it feels pretty natural while you're doing it. So, I mean, that's good. Uh, the health system is horrible. So, you start out with like 3 or 4 health, which is about enough to get instantly killed by every enemy in the game. But you find health upgrades literally fucking everywhere. Like, there's hundreds of them. And you only need 2 per to get another upgrade, right? So, you know, like with Pieces of Heart in Zelda, you find 4 of them, you get an extra heart. Well, in this, you find 2 and you get an extra little circle on your health bar. The problem is that when you die and come back, you don't get all of those circles back. And it's not until very late in the game that I unlocked the ability to restore health by spending energy. I don't remember where I picked it up, if it was actually in a late game area or not, but I did not find that ability until like 20 hours in, and it was so fucking annoying. um, So, you respawn with the same, like, 2 hits worth of health every time you die. And there's lots of things in the game that kill you instantly, which, you know, is so fun. Because why would I bother to have a health bar when I could just die instantly? Like, this is another stupid design thing that they probably took from Shovel Knight, because Shovel Knight took it from Mega Man, and it should have died with Mega Man because it's fucking stupid. But let me lay it out for you. If your game has a health bar, there should not be instant kills. That defeats the purpose of a health bar. Get your bullshit out of here. Make your systems work together, not against each other. If you're building a game like old school Mario, where you have 1 health anyway, then sure, fall down a pit, die instantly, who cares? But if you've got 10 hearts and you fall down a pit and die instantly, that's bullshit. Right? It's complete bullshit. It's not fun. It just, like, there's no point in having a health bar at that point. Like, if your health bar can disappear instantly, why is it segmented and made to look like it can, keep you going through multiple hits? If it doesn't do that, then it shouldn't be there. It shouldn't be conveying that idea to the player if it doesn't actually do it. If you have 4 orbs of health and every single enemy in the game deals 4 orbs of damage, adjust your numbers so that it's 1 and 1 instead of 4 and 4, you stupid cunt. Like, I'm sorry, but that's bad design. You're misinforming the player and ruining their experience by making them think they can take more than they can. And it feels really bad when you've been through the entire game and you've collected 20,000 health upgrades and you still die instantly. It feels shitty. It feels like your health hasn't upgraded at all, and what's the fucking point? Now, to the game's credit, at the very least, when you die, you respawn like 10 feet away instantly. So it's not a big deal, but it's just dumb and annoying. And, when you're doing a tricky platforming section, you don't want to die instantly. You want to be able to get through it. Sure, no damage runs can be like a fun challenge for people, but on normal mode, for players doing their first run, you don't want insta-death. It's bad. And I mean, if you do have a health upgrade system, right? You can have enemies late in the game who are strong enough that if you didn't upgrade your health, you're going to get pounded, right? That's fair. But for players who did upgrade their health, they should be able to take a couple of hits, right? That's how you balance the system. And you shouldn't ever just one-shot your player regardless of their health level. And if a player, has spent the last 20 hours collecting health upgrades and now, instantly gets killed by a hole, and now they want to go challenge, the enemy on the other side of that hole because they just figured out how to do it, and now you have them at 1/4 health because they respawned and only started with 1/4 health, that fight's going to suck and they're going to die again, or they're going to be on the other side of that pit and have to do it all over again, and they're still going to have that low health, and that enemy's still going to kick their ass, and it's still going to suck. Because there's no healing unless you unlock that one ability I mentioned earlier. That's the only way I've seen in the entire game to restore health. Enemies can randomly drop healing orbs, but they almost never do. And certain enemies are pre-programmed to never do it because they come in swarms. Which, 10 out of 10, the most, that's a great idea. Just cover the game with these enemies and to make it so that they don't heal because, you know, there's a lot of them and therefore they shouldn't heal. That's brilliant. Fucking genius. Um, you know, and there are these little pads that you can jump on and they release some healing orbs, but they're, you know, only in predetermined locations and usually not next to the bottomless pit you just fell in for the 50th time. Um, you know, or the spikes, because spikes do the same thing. I mean, spikes admittedly don't instantly kill you, but they do take off like 4 hits of damage all at once. So, you know, if you just respawned and you only have a quarter of your health to begin with, then they do instantly kill you, and it makes it really annoying. Um, now, understand, I'm not saying the game is too hard. Like, I got through it. I got through all the sections I complained about, and you know, like, as far as difficulty goes, I would say this game is not very high. But as far as like the number of times I've been sitting there annoyed at the respawn system, God, it's constant. The respawn system sucks. Like you respawn instantly, and that in and of itself is good. But like the fact that you have to do it so much sucks, and it loses tension. Like if you respawn instantly, and there's no consequence for dying, you don't even drop your light energy or whatever. Why bother? You know, why be cautious at all? Just brute force trial and error every single section, which is what you have to do for some sections, and it's stupid and I hate it. Like, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have to do brute force trial and error all the time. I should be able to have fun with the game. So, yeah, Ori and the Will of the Wisps is not very fun. Um, As far as collectibles go, there's a decent collection of stuff. Like the main things you're going to be collecting are the charms and the Gorlek ore. Um, and I guess like there's a couple of things you need for like a trading side quest. But I didn't even realize I was doing that until I was already like 12 trades in, and I was like, "Oh, I've been trading these things, haven't I? I guess this is the trading side quest." Um, and more importantly, like it happens like slowly throughout the game instead of, you know, all at once at the end like a regular trading side quest. So it's, I don't know, it just doesn't feel like you're proactively doing it because you just kind of half-assedly do it in between other shit, you know. There's a bunch of like trial shrines to complete. Uh, those are kind of interesting. Um, I don't know, like the combat ones especially feel stupid because, well, because enemies take 1,000 hits, and I just went on that whole rant about how the health system doesn't really work very well. Like, you can upgrade until you have like 15 life orbs, and your survivability seems to be exactly the same as it was at the beginning of the game, which is not how that's supposed to work. Like, you guys have played Metroid, right? Like, obviously you've played Metroid, you steal so much from it. Why didn't you understand how the energy tank system worked? I mean, you know, and it's just kind of hard to do anything about it. Like, you just swarmed with enemies and then constantly. So, I mean, those ones can be a little bit boring and repetitive because you have to do it several times. And then the races, I don't know, like, it's kind of a fun idea. Like, hey, we built in all these platforming puzzles. Why don't we, like, have time trials for them? And that's fine in and of itself, but I don't know. It just feels kind of dumb. And like the timing on them is pretty tight. Like they give you a little shadow version of yourself that does the trial, and you have to beat that. Kind of like the Shadow Mario from Mario Galaxy stuff. Um, and so you have to overcome that, but like it's pretty fast. It takes the optimal path and is pretty fast. And the only way you can really get ahead of it is to just abuse the dash mechanic slightly more than it does, because it doesn't dash every single second it could dash, and you have to dash every single second you can dash in order to get ahead of it. Um, and that's really all you can do. And the individual trials are built in places where like you can't really how do I put this? You can't use the upgrades you've gotten from later on in the game to make the game faster or to get through the trial faster. So there's not really a point to going back and doing the ones that you didn't do earlier, because they're going to be just the same level of challenge as before. Um, so it's whatever. It is about the only way to get the light energy, which is something you need for a bunch of upgrades and shit. So like, that's cool, but overall, I think the shrines are just kind of missed opportunity more than anything else. Like, time trials are fun for certain people, but like, I know, I feel like it would be more interesting if having more abilities made the time trials easier, or if there were like tiers of completion instead of just either you beat the shadow or you don't beat the shadow, you know. Um, and like when you complete the trial, you get ranked against other people, and my fastest time was like 8 millionth, and so um, either this game has more players than I thought, or the way it ranks timing is a little bit jank, or both. And also probably there are people hacking, because like anytime you have time trials, people hack in zero time, and like that always happens, and it's stupid, and it means that time trial leaderboards mean nothing. So eh. Because like realistically, there is a fastest possible time for completing every time trial. If you were to task your way through it, for example, you would find what the optimal route is and everything. And there are times that are way lower than that on the time trial in every game that has public leaderboards for that kind of thing. So it's just who cares. So overall, it's derivative, it's repetitive, it's pulling the same tear-jerking shit I thought was boring last time. you know, it's it's exactly what I expected from Ori. I played the first game and I thought it was boring and unoriginal and only got praise because it has some pretty colors. And I played the sequel and I thought it was boring and plagiaristic and only gets praised because people don't realize how plagiaristic it is, and also pretty colors. And to be fair, I'm not saying you can't take like design concepts from previous games and make them your own. Like that's how the industry grows. That's the whole point. But like you have to improve on those systems, or do something interesting with them. Like I just don't think this game like understands the systems that it took or what to do with them, and they're just kind of thrown in there because Hollow Knight had charms and it was the best Metroidvania style game ever, so I guess that's the industry standard now. Let's have charms, you know? And like there's no reason for that. There's nothing about the charms that makes me think this was well thought out and always part of the game, and they always wanted to have charms. It just makes me think, yeah, they played Hollow Knight, and they got really obsessed with the charm system, and they did their own version of it that doesn't really build on it in a meaningful way, and slapped it into their existing game, and it just feels that way. I don't know for sure if that's what happened, but that's how it feels, and it shouldn't, you know? Um, so yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't have a problem with games taking ideas from each other and building on them. And I don't even really have a problem with games that are like dedicated copycats, like I'm not down on Bug Fables because it's a copy of uh, Paper Mario. Like that's what it's supposed to be. That's fine. But but I want games that one do interesting things and two do things well. Right? Like if you can't be interesting, at least be really functional. And like Ori and the Will of the Wisps is pretty functional. Like your animations are pretty smooth and your movement is very clean, and like you feel pretty good when you get through a difficult platforming section. Um, but it just has so many other little things that nag on me and drag down the experience that I can't enjoy those moments of pure, you know, high quality gameplay. Because those are there. I do accept that and like enjoy it. But there's just so many little things where it's just like this design wasn't thought out. And I don't know why it wasn't thought out, but it should have been, and I'm annoyed that it wasn't. And I haven't even really talked about like level design and stuff. Like the level design is okay for the most part. They really overuse thorns and spikes fucking everywhere. Um, Especially like in corridors you have to swim through or use your sand power to dig through once you unlock that. But like, eh, I mean like I said, the spikes are annoying to deal with, but I don't really care that much. Like, it's whatever. It's just kind of unnecessary. Um, it's not like limited to one area. Like in Hollow Knight, there's an area that has a bunch of spikes and stuff in it because it's a thorny jungle area, and that's fine. But and then there's another area that has a bunch of spikes in it because it's all centipede demon legs, and that's fine. But it's not like that's everywhere. And also, Hollow Knight handles spike damage a much better way. You you take one damage instead of like six, and just puts you back on the last platform you were on. Like, whatever. Um, well, actually, some of them don't even put you back on the platform. Some of them just deal one damage and knock you back. But it's kind of. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like this game wishes it could be as good as Hollow Knight, and it isn't. Um, Also, there's a performance issue. I don't know if this is known, but when you open the game, it just hangs on a loading screen for like 10 minutes before you get to the main menu where you can, file select and options and all that. And it's infuriating. Also, it refuses to stay in full screen mode. Every time I open the game, it opens in windowed mode. Why? I put you in full screen mode every single time. Stop making me do this every time I open the game. It's so fucking frustrating. Like I just want it to stay in full screen mode. Ugh. Like I don't know. Um, yeah. That's my overall opinion of the game. It's fine for what it is, but what it is isn't really great. Um, so yeah, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next life. Laters. Hey, thanks for watching the video. If you have any things to say about it, leave those in the comment section. If you like the video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, share the video, tell your friends, start a cult, sacrifice your firstborn and paint their skull golden. I don't know, not that last bit. No human sacrifices. I'm legally liable. No, none of that shit. But, I got Facebook, Twitter, Twitch. I stream on Mondays. I also have a Patreon, but the obvious caveat with Patreon is you never donate to anyone unless you have money to burn. And if you have money to burn, then why not donate to a charity instead? I've got a few linked in my description at all times. I'm not affiliated with any of them, obviously, but I just thought they were cool. So, thanks for watching.